The crimson sky bled across the horizon of Talisphur, casting long shadows over the radiation-scarred desert. The once thriving military outpost now stood as nothing more than skeletal ruins, a grim testament to the devastating biological warfare that had ravaged the planet centuries ago. The air shimmered with heat and residual radiation, a deadly cocktail that had created the perfect breeding ground for the planet's most feared inhabitant. Erin Voss adjusted her exosuit's cooling system as she gazed at the desolate landscape from the viewport of the transport shuttle. As the lead xenobiologist for the Aegis Space Alliance, she had been dispatched to investigate reports of the legendary monstrum rubrum, a creature so rare and deadly that most considered it a myth. Her fingers tapped nervously against the reinforced glass as the shuttle descended toward the makeshift base camp. Nervous, Voss. The voice belonged to Rear Admiral Cale Thornridge, the commanding officer of the Aegis expedition. His weathered face appeared impassive, but Erin could detect the undercurrent of tension in his voice. This mission is unprecedented. Nobody has ever documented this creature and lived to publish their findings. Erin turned to face him, her determined expression reflecting in the polished surface of his insignia. That's precisely why we're here, Admiral. If monstrum rubrum exists, it could revolutionize our understanding of adaptive evolution in high radiation environments. The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud, sending a cloud of rust-colored dust billowing around the landing gear. Through the settling particles, Erin could make out the prefabricated structures of the base camp, a collection of reinforced domes connected by pressurized walkways. "Welcome to hell," muttered Raul Jimenez, the weapons engineer, who had been tasked with outfitting the expedition with adequate defensive measures. As the mission brief had euphemistically stated, the stocky man carried himself with the rigid posture of someone who had seen too many missions go wrong. "I've equipped the team with experimental pulse rifles that should penetrate even the toughest exoskeleton, just in case your new friend isn't in a socializing mood." Erin frowned at the engineer's cavalier attitude. "We're here to study, not to hunt." Engineer Jimenez. "Study, hunt." Jimenez shrugged, checking the charge on his sidearm. "Out here, they tend to become the same thing when things go south." The loading ramp descended with a hydraulic hiss, and the team was immediately assaulted by the harsh reality of Talos 4, a blast of superheated air carrying the metallic tang of radiation. Erin's exosuit immediately adjusted, filtering the toxic particles and regulating her body temperature. "Base Alpha established and secure, Admiral," reported the security chief through their comms. "Perimeter sensors are active, and we've got drone surveillance covering a 20-kilometer radius." Thornridge nodded, his gaze sweeping across the horizon. "Very good, Dr. Voss. I expect a full briefing in 1 hour. Let's get this show on the road." As the expedition team dispersed to their assigned duties, Erin made her way to the research dome, her mind already cataloging the alien flora that had managed to adapt to this hellish environment. The vegetation was sparse but fascinating. Crimson vines that seemed to pulse with an internal light. Crystalline structures that might have been either mineral formations or some form of silicon-based plant life. The research dome hummed with activity as technicians calibrated equipment and set up monitoring stations. At the center stood a holographic display of the planet's surface, highlighting areas where unusual seismic activity had been detected, the purported hunting grounds of the monstrum rubrum. "Dr. Voss," a voice called from behind her. Erin turned to see Dr. Raya Singh, the expedition's animal psychologist, approaching with a tablet in hand. "I've compiled the scant behavioral data we have on the creature. It's not much, I'm afraid. Mostly fragmented accounts from mining operations that were abandoned decades ago." Singh was a slender woman with keen eyes that missed nothing. She had built her reputation studying the galaxy's most dangerous predators, developing protocols for peaceful interaction that had saved countless lives. "What do we know for certain?" Erin asked, accepting the tablet. Singh's expression was grave. "Very little. It's apparently massive, Estimates suggest a height of 3 stories when fully erect. Its hide is described as crimson with metallic flecks, possibly an adaptation to deflect radiation, and it exhibits some form of neurological interference capability that disrupts both electronic systems and organic neural networks. Aaron scrolled through the sparse data, frowning. Neurological interference? That's unprecedented. So is surviving in an environment with radiation levels that would kill most organisms within minutes. Singh replied, "Whatever this creature is, it's evolved capabilities far beyond our current understanding of xenobiology." The briefing an hour later was tense. Thornridge stood before the assembled team, his posture rigid as he outlined the mission parameters. "This is not an extended research expedition," he declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the command dome. "We have a 72-hour window to locate, document, and assess the threat level of the monstrum rubrum. If the creature proves hostile, we are authorized to neutralize it." Aaron stepped forward, unable to contain her objection. "Admiral, with all due respect, we can't just destroy a potentially unique species before we've had a chance to study it properly." Thornridge's gaze hardened. "Dr. Voss, this isn't a university research project. Aegis has invested considerable resources, because 3 mining outposts have gone dark in the past year alone. The last transmission we received included footage of something tearing through reinforced walls like they were paper. Our primary objective is to determine if this creature poses a threat to future operations in this sector. And if it does," Aaron challenged, "then we eliminate the threat," Thornridge stated flatly. "The universe is full of fascinating creatures. Doctor, our job is to make sure they don't become extinction-level events for humanity." The expedition set out at dawn the following day. A convoy of 3 all-terrain vehicles, specially designed to withstand the harsh conditions of Talos 4. Aaron rode in the lead vehicle, accompanied by Singh and a taciturn security officer named Malik. The landscape stretched before them, a wasteland of rust-colored dunes and jagged rock formations that cast bizarre shadows in the blood-red light. "Picking up something unusual on the seismic sensors," reported the technician, monitoring the equipment in the rear of the vehicle. "Rhythmic vibrations, approximately 2 kilometers ahead." Aaron leaned forward, her heart rate accelerating. "Can you determine the source?" "Negative," the technician replied, frowning at his display. "But whatever it is, it's big, and it's moving." The convoy halted at the edge of a vast depression in the landscape, a bowl-like formation that might once have been an impact crater. From their elevated position, they had a clear view of the terrain below and the massive tracks that cut across the dusty surface. "Mother of stars," breathed Malik, raising his binoculars. "Those footprints must be 2 meters across." Aaron felt a mixture of trepidation and excitement as she studied the tracks through her own enhanced visor. The pattern suggested a quadrupedal creature, but the depth of the impressions indicated immense weight. "The tracks are fresh," Singh observed, kneeling to examine the disturbed soil. "Within the last hour, I'd say." A low, resonant rumble suddenly rolled across the crater, a sound so deep it seemed to vibrate in Aaron's chest cavity, rather than reach her through her ears. The expedition team froze, weapons instinctively raised toward the source of the sound. "All units, defensive positions," Thornridge commanded through the comms. "Drone surveillance, give me eyes on that sound." The small reconnaissance drones deployed from the vehicles, their quiet hum almost lost in the tense silence that had fallen over the team. Aaron watched their progress on her tablet. Her breath caught in her throat as they disappeared over a ridge of jagged rock formations. The first drone's feed abruptly dissolved into static. "We've lost Recon 1, reported the technician, fingers flying over his console. "No indication of mechanical failure. The signal just disappeared." The second drone followed suit moments later, but not before transmitting a fleeting image that made Aaron's blood run cold. A massive, scaled appendage sweeping through the air. "Movement detected!" shouted Malik, pointing toward a dust cloud rising on the far side of the crater. "Something's coming our way! Fast!" The ground beneath them began to tremble, a rhythmic pounding that sent cascades of loose rock tumbling down the crater's edge. Erin gripped the vehicle's roll cage, her scientific curiosity momentarily overwhelmed by primal fear. And then they saw it. The monstrum rubrum emerged from behind a rock formation, and even the most hardened members of the expedition team fell silent in awe. The creature stood as tall as a 3-story building, its body a nightmare fusion of reptilian and insectoid features. Its hide gleamed crimson in the harsh sunlight, metallic flecks catching the light like thousands of tiny mirrors. 6 powerful limbs supported its massive frame, 4 legs that ended in clawed appendages the size of small vehicles, and 2 upper limbs that seemed more articulated, almost hand-like in their structure. But it was the creature's head that truly defied comprehension. A crown-like structure surrounded a central mass that pulsated with bioluminescent light, flanked by multiple sensory organs that Erin couldn't even begin to classify. No eyes were visible, at least not in any conventional sense. Yet she had the distinct impression that the creature was staring directly at them. "Weapons hot!" ordered Thornridge, his voice tight with tension. "But hold fire unless I give the command." The monstrum rubrum tilted its massive head, the crown-like structure flaring outward as it emitted another resonant rumble that seemed to penetrate Erin's very bones. The readouts on her equipment fluctuated wildly, and she felt a strange pressure building behind her eyes. "It's scanning us," she realized aloud. "The neurological interference. It's not just a defensive mechanism. It's how it perceives its environment." As if in response to her words, the creature took a thunderous step forward, then another, each movement sending tremors through the ground, despite the surprising grace with which it carried its enormous bulk. "It's approaching our position," Malik reported unnecessarily, his pulse rifle trained on the advancing behemoth. "Orders, Admiral?" Thornridge's jaw tightened. "Maintain position. Dr. Voss, is this thing showing signs of aggression or just curiosity?" Erin studied the creature's movements, forcing herself to think like a scientist rather than prey. Its posture isn't overtly threatening. The sensory crown is extended, but not flared in the way that might indicate aggression. "I think it's investigating us." "Well, it can investigate from a distance," Thornridge replied grimly. "Defensive perimeter. Now, if it comes within 50 meters, we deploy sonic deterrence." The team scrambled to establish a defensive line, deploying portable shield generators and sonic emitters designed to repel large predators. Erin continued to observe the monstrum rubrum, noting details for her research log, even as her heart pounded in her chest. "Radiation levels are spiking," reported one of the technicians, her voice rising in alarm. "The creature appears to be generating some kind of radiation field." "Is it weaponizing radiation?" demanded Thornridge. Erin shook her head, studying the readings. "I don't think so. The pattern is too regular, too controlled. It might be a form of communication, or perhaps how it regulates its internal systems in this environment." The ground suddenly erupted around them as indigenous life forms burst from the soil, arthropod-like creatures with translucent exoskeletons, swarming in their hundreds toward the expedition team. The security personnel opened fire immediately, the air filling with the sharp reports of pulse weapons and the chittering screams of the dying creatures. "They're being driven!" Singh shouted over the commotion. "The monstrum's neurological field is affecting the local fauna, triggering a defensive swarm." Erin watched in horror as one of the security officers fell beneath a wave of the creatures, his screams cutting off abruptly as they overwhelmed him. The defensive perimeter was breaking down, the team forced to retreat toward the vehicles as the swarm continued to pour from the ground. And all the while, the monstrum rubrum advanced, its massive form now less than 100 meters away. "Evacuate to the vehicles," ordered Thornridge. "Prepare to deploy heavy ordnance. That thing is controlling these attacks." In the chaos of the retreat, Erin found herself separated from the main group, pinned between an advancing wave of the arthropod creatures and a jagged rock formation. Her pulse pistol was nearly depleted, and the creatures seemed to be focusing their attention on her with unnatural precision. The shadow of the monstrum rubrum fell over her as it loomed above, its massive head swiveling down to regard her with its alien senses. Erin pressed herself against the rock face, certain that she was about to be crushed or consumed. Instead, a strange calm descended over her mind as the creature's neurological field enveloped her. The pressure behind her eyes intensified, but it wasn't painful. Rather, it felt almost like a question, a probing touch against her consciousness. In that moment, Erin made a decision that defied all rational thought. She reached up and disengaged her helmet seal, exposing her face to the toxic atmosphere of Talos 4 for the briefest moment as she pulled off her protective glove. "Dr. Voss, what are you doing?" Thornridge's voice crackled through her comms, tight with alarm. "Reseal your suit immediately." Erin ignored the order, her bare hand extended toward the massive creature that towered above her. Time seemed to slow as she reached out, her fingers trembling as they approached the crimson hide of the monstrum rubrum's lowered head. "It's okay," she whispered, though whether to the creature or herself, she couldn't say. "I'm not here to hurt you." Her hand made contact with the creature's hide, and she gasped at the sensation, warm, almost feverishly so, with a texture like smooth leather embedded with countless tiny crystal formations. The monstrum rubrum went utterly still at her touch, the neurological pressure intensifying for a moment before suddenly receding. Around them, the swarming arthropods froze in place, then began to retreat back into the soil as quickly as they had emerged. "What's happening?" Thornridge demanded. "Voss, report!" Erin could barely find her voice, awe overwhelming her scientific detachment. "It's responding to physical contact. The aggression was defensive. It perceived our equipment as a threat." Emboldened by the creature's calm reaction, Erin moved her hand in a gentle stroking motion across its hide, marveling at the way the crystalline formations seemed to ripple in response to her touch. The monstrum rubrum emitted a low, harmonic sound that bore no resemblance to its earlier threatening rumbles. This was almost musical in quality. "I think it's enjoying this," she said incredulously. Singh had approached cautiously, her own scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "It's displaying behavior reminiscent of an earth canine receiving affection." "Fascinating." The monstrum rubrum slowly lowered its massive body, rolling partially to one side to expose its underside, a region where the crimson hide transitioned to a paler, more iridescent coloration. The gesture was so unexpected, so incongruously vulnerable, that Erin couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. "It wants a belly rub," she announced, her voice caught between hysteria and wonder. "This creature that's been terrorizing mining outposts wants a belly rub." Thornridge and the security team watched in stunned disbelief as Erin cautiously approached the exposed underside of the massive creature. Her bare hand extended. When she made contact with the iridescent hide of its belly, the monstrum rubrum emitted a sound that could only be described as a purr, if purrs could be felt resonating through the ground beneath one's feet. "This contradicts everything we thought we knew," Singh murmured, recording the interaction on her tablet. A creature of this size and apparent ferocity, displaying pet-like behavior. It's unprecedented. The moment of wonder was shattered by the whine of charging weapons. Erin looked up to see Jimenez and a squad of security personnel advancing, heavy pulse cannons leveled at the exposed underside of the monstrum rubrum. "Now's our chance," Jimenez called. "While it's vulnerable!" "No!" Erin shouted, throwing herself between the weapons and the creature. "Stand down immediately!" Thornridge's voice cut through the tension. Explain yourself, Dr. Voss. Why are you protecting this creature? Because it's not the monster we thought it was, Erin replied, her hand still resting on the warm hide of the monstrum rubrum. It's intelligent. It's responsive. It was defending itself from what it perceived as a threat. And now, it's showing trust. If we betray that trust, we'll never understand these creatures. These creatures, Thornridge echoed. You believe there are more? The monstrum rubrum suddenly rolled back to its feet, rising to its full, imposing height. The expedition team raised their weapons instinctively, but Erin remained calm, maintaining physical contact with one of its lower limbs. It's not threatening us, she insisted. It's responding to something else. As if to confirm her words, the creature turned its sensory crown toward the ridge beyond the crater, emitting a complex series of harmonic tones that echoed across the landscape. To everyone's shock, an answering call came from beyond the ridge, then another, and another, until the air vibrated with a chorus of alien voices. Mother of stars, breathed Malik. There's a whole herd of them. The monstrum rubrum gently disengaged from Erin's touch and took several steps toward the ridge, then turned its massive head back toward her in what she somehow knew was an invitation. It wants us to follow, she said, her voice filled with wonder. It's leading us to the others. Thornridge's expression was conflicted, years of military caution warring with scientific curiosity. This could be a trap, Dr. Voss. Or it could be the greatest xenobiological discovery in human history, Erin countered. Admiral, this creature had every opportunity to harm us. Instead, it responded to gentle contact. That has to mean something. After a tense moment, Thornridge nodded. We proceed with extreme caution. Security teams maintain defensive posture, but no aggressive actions unless directly threatened. Is that clear? The expedition followed the monstrum rubrum over the ridge and into a valley that had been hidden from their sensors, a depression in the landscape that shimmered with an unusual atmospheric distortion. As they descended, Erin gasped at the sight that greeted them. A dozen creatures, similar to their guide, populated the valley, varying in size but all bearing the distinctive crimson, metallic-flecked hide. Some were gathered around crystalline formations that pulsed with energy, while others appeared to be tending to smaller versions of themselves, juveniles. Erin realized with a thrill of discovery. It's a breeding ground, Singh whispered in awe. They're not solitary predators at all. They're social creatures with family structures. The monstrum rubrum that had led them emitted a complex series of tones, causing the others to turn their sensory crowns toward the human visitors. There was a moment of tense silence as the creatures assessed the intruders in their sanctuary. Then, to the astonishment of the expedition team, the largest of the creatures approached and slowly lowered itself to expose its iridescent belly, mimicking the behavior they had witnessed earlier. Erin turned to Thornridge, unable to suppress her smile. I believe this is their way of extending diplomatic relations. Admiral, what's Aegis protocol for belly rubs as a first contact method? The weeks that followed transformed the Aegis mission from a potential military operation to the most significant xenobiological study in human history. Under Erin's guidance, the expedition established a permanent research outpost at the edge of the breeding valley, with strict protocols to minimize disruption to the creature's natural behaviors. They learned that the monstrum rubrum, which Erin had begun to call radiance, due to their bioluminescent properties, were not responsible for the destruction of the mining outposts. At least, not intentionally. Their neurological fields had interfered with the outpost's systems, causing catastrophic failures, and the subsequent human panic had triggered defensive responses from the creatures. They perceived technology as a potential threat, Erin explained during a briefing with Aegis Command. But they respond remarkably well to organic contact. We've developed modified exosuits that minimize electromagnetic emissions, allowing us to approach them safely. The most fascinating discovery came when Singh managed to establish a rudimentary form of communication through a combination of touch and harmonic sounds. The radiants, it seemed, perceived the world primarily through radiation and vibration, with physical contact serving as their most intimate form of interaction. They don't understand the concept of violence as we do, Singh reported. Their society is built on consensus and communal care. The neurological interference that we initially perceived as an attack is actually their primary mode of communication. They were trying to talk to us, and our technology interpreted it as hostility. Thornridge, who had initially been the strongest advocate for neutralizing the creatures, had undergone perhaps the most dramatic change in perspective. Aaron found him one evening at the observation post, watching as a juvenile radiant practiced manipulating its neurological field under the guidance of an adult. "You were right, Dr. Voss," he admitted as she joined him. "They're not monsters. They're just different, adapted to survive in a way we never considered possible." Aaron nodded, her gaze fixed on the gentle interaction between the creatures. "That's the heart of xenobiology, Admiral. Life finds a way, even in the most hostile environments. Our job isn't to judge it by human standards, but to understand it on its own terms. And sometimes those terms include belly rubs," Thornridge added with the ghost of a smile. "Sometimes," Aaron agreed, returning his smile. "Though I've had to institute a rotation system for the research team. Our largest radiant, the one that first approached us, has become quite demanding about his daily affection quota." As if summoned by her words, the massive creature appeared at the edge of the observation area, its sensory crown extended in what they now recognized as a greeting. It approached with surprising grace for its size, coming to rest before the transparent barrier that separated the human outpost from the radiant territory. With deliberate movements, it lowered itself to expose its iridescent belly, the now familiar request unmistakable. "Your turn, Admiral," Aaron said, gesturing toward the access hatch. "The suit by the door is calibrated for minimal interference." Thornridge hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I suppose diplomatic relations must be maintained." As Aaron watched the stern military commander don the modified exosuit and cautiously approach the massive creature, she couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. From fear and the brink of violence to this moment of cross-species connection, a connection based not on complex technology or weapons, but on the simple power of gentle touch. The radiant's harmonious purr vibrated through the observation post as Thornridge somewhat awkwardly rubbed its exposed belly, the sound carrying notes of contentment that transcended the vast evolutionary gulf between their species. In her report to Aegis Command, Aaron would describe the scientific importance of their discoveries, the potential applications of the radiant's unique biological adaptations, and the protocols established for peaceful coexistence. But, in her personal log, she recorded a simpler truth. Sometimes, the universe's most fearsome-looking creatures just needed someone brave enough to offer a belly rub. The crimson sun of Talos IV began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley of the radiance. In the fading light, humans and aliens continued their unlikely communion, a testament to the power of compassion over fear, and the universal language of kindness that needed no translation. 4 months into the Talos IV expedition, the research outpost had expanded into a permanent scientific installation. The initial 72-hour window had been extended indefinitely as Aegis recognized the extraordinary opportunity presented by peaceful contact with the Radiants. Aaron's quarters were cluttered with specimen samples, holographic models of radiant anatomy, and stacks of data tablets containing her research notes. She sat cross-legged on her bunk, recording observations from the day's fieldwork when a soft chime announced a visitor. "Enter," she called, setting aside her tablet. The door slid open to reveal Singh, her expression animated with excitement. "You need to see this," she said without preamble. "We've made a breakthrough with the communication interface." Aaron followed Singh to the research dome, where a team of technicians huddled around a complex array of equipment. At the center of the setup was a neural translator, a device designed to interpret the neurological patterns emitted by the radiance and convert them into comprehensible data. "We've been approaching this all wrong," Singh explained, as they weaved through the workstations. "We were trying to interpret their neurological emissions as language, but it's much more complex than that. They don't communicate in discrete units like words or sentences. It's more like sharing states of being." One of the technicians looked up from his console. Dr. Singh's theory was that their neurological fields actually create a form of shared consciousness. So, instead of trying to translate specific signals, we modified the interface to create a kind of empathic bridge. Aaron's eyes widened. "You're suggesting we can actually experience their perceptions?" "In a limited, filtered way," Singh clarified. "The human brain couldn't handle the full bandwidth of their communications. It would be like trying to drink from a fire hose. But we can sample specific emotional and sensory patterns." The lead technician offered Aaron a sleek headset. "We've tested it with controlled emissions recorded from our friendliest subject. Would you like to try it?" Aaron took the headset, turning it over in her hands as she considered the implications. "This goes beyond observation into direct experience," she murmured. "It could revolutionize our understanding of alien cognition." "Or fry your brain," Jimenez commented, as he entered the dome, his expression skeptical. "Are we sure this is safe?" Singh's expression tightened slightly. "We've conducted extensive safety protocols. Engineer Jimenez, the neural load is carefully regulated." Aaron placed the headset over her temples, feeling the cool touch of the neural contacts against her skin. "If we want to truly understand the radiance, we need to be willing to experience the world as they do," she said, reaching for the activation control. "Even if it means taking risks." The sensation began as a gentle pressure behind her eyes, similar to what she had felt in the presence of the radiance, but more focused, more refined. Colors intensified. The ordinary lighting of the research dome suddenly alive with spectra she had never perceived before. She gasped as her awareness expanded, layers of sensory information unfolding like the petals of an exotic flower. "Aaron," Singh's voice seemed to come from very far away. "What are you experiencing?" "It's incredible," Aaron whispered, her eyes wide but unseeing of the physical space around her. "I can perceive radiation patterns, electromagnetic fields. The power systems running through the dome walls look like flowing rivers of light." She turned slowly, her perception extending beyond the confines of the dome. "I can sense the radiance in the valley. Their presence is like music made visible, harmonic patterns overlapping and intertwining." A sudden surge of emotion washed over her, not her own, but alien and yet strangely familiar. Joy, curiosity, a profound sense of connection to the environment and to each other. She felt tears welling in her eyes at the beauty of it. "They're not just surviving in this radiation," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "They're thriving in it, drawing energy from it. What we perceive as a hostile environment is a garden of abundance to them." The experience lasted only minutes before Singh gently removed the headset, but its impact would resonate for far longer. Aaron sat in stunned silence, processing the profound shift in perspective she had just undergone. "Now you understand why I've been pushing so hard for the communication project," Singh said softly. "This isn't just about scientific discovery. It's about expanding our conception of consciousness itself." Aaron nodded, still struggling to articulate the experience in human terms. "We need to recalibrate all our research parameters. We've been studying them as biological entities, but they're so much more than that. The neurological field isn't just a tool they use. It's fundamental to their being. In the days that followed, the research team refined the neural interface, creating a more stable connection that allowed for extended periods of shared perception. Aaron spent hours immersed in the radiant way of experiencing the world, each session revealing new insights into their social structures, their relationship with their environment, and their unique form of consciousness. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, during a routine session with the largest radiant, the one that had first approached their expedition. Aaron had nicknamed him Ambassador, though she was increasingly aware that human concepts like individual identity were poor approximations of how the radiants perceived themselves. She sat cross-legged at the edge of the valley, the neural interface headset active as Ambassador reclined nearby. His massive form seemingly relaxed as his neurological field gently interfaced with the human technology. Through the filter of the translator, Aaron had been asking simple questions about radiant social structures, receiving impressions and emotional states rather than concrete answers. Then, without warning, a clear concept formed in her mind, not in words, but in a structured pattern that the translator rendered as a question. Why small beings harm world? Aaron gasped, nearly losing the connection in her surprise. This wasn't just an emotional impression or sensory data. It was a deliberate communication, a question directed specifically at her. "Ambassador," she whispered, reaching out to stabilize the connection. "Are you asking me a question?" The response came as a complex ripple through the neural link, a mixture of affirmation and curiosity. The translator struggled to process the input, but Aaron understood the essence. Ambassador was indeed asking why humans had damaged Talos 4 through their activities. With careful concentration, Aaron attempted to form a response, not in words, but in emotional impressions and conceptual patterns that might bridge the gap between their modes of thought. She projected regret, ignorance, and a desire to learn and do better. The exchange that followed was halting and imperfect, but it represented something profound, the first true conversation between human and radiant consciousnesses. Ambassador conveyed that the mining operations had disrupted ancient energy patterns in the planet's crust, patterns that the radiants had cultivated for generations. The destruction hadn't been malicious on the humans' part, but it had been devastating to the radiant community. When Aaron finally removed the headset, her hands were trembling with the magnitude of what had just occurred. She found Thornridge waiting at the perimeter of the research area, his expression unreadable. "I've been observing," he said as she approached. "Something significant happened." "They're not just intelligent," Aaron told him, her voice urgent with the need to convey the importance of her discovery. "They're a civilization, Admiral, an ancient, sophisticated civilization that we nearly destroyed because we couldn't recognize it." Thornridge frowned. "Are you certain you're not projecting human attributes onto alien behaviors, Dr. Voss? The neural interface is experimental technology." "I'm certain," Aaron insisted. "Ambassador asked me why we damaged their world. He showed me how the mining operations disrupted energy patterns they've been cultivating for generations, patterns that sustain their community." She took a deep breath, steadying herself before continuing. "Admiral, we need to completely reassess Aegis's approach to Talos Fu. This isn't just a research opportunity or a resource extraction site. This is first contact with a non-humanoid civilization that perceives reality in a fundamentally different way than we do." Thornridge was silent for a long moment, his gaze shifting to the massive form of Ambassador in the distance. "If what you're saying is true," he said finally, "then Aegis protocols require me to escalate this to the highest levels of command. This goes beyond a scientific expedition or resource assessment." "And what will they do?" Aaron asked, unable to keep the concern from her voice. "The Radiants are vulnerable, Admiral. Their way of life is completely incompatible with our traditional methods of space exploitation. I don't know, Thornridge admitted. But I give you my word that I will advocate for diplomatic caution rather than hasty action. You've changed my perspective, Dr. Voss. Perhaps I can change theirs. The call to Aegis Command was tense, with Thornridge standing rigid before the holographic projection of the High Commander. Aaron waited outside the communications dome, pacing anxiously as the fate of the Radiance was discussed in the sterile language of interstellar politics. When Thornridge finally emerged, his expression was grim but determined. "Command is sending a diplomatic delegation," he announced. "They want to assess the situation personally before making any policy decisions." "And until then?" Aaron asked. "Until then, we continue our research, but with expanded parameters." Thornridge replied, "I've been authorized to establish formal first contact protocols. Dr. Voss, you're now the official Aegis liaison to the Radiant civilization." The word seemed to cost him some effort, but Aaron recognized the significance of his choice. By acknowledging the Radiants as a civilization rather than merely a species, he was placing them within a framework that afforded them certain rights and considerations under Aegis doctrine. "Thank you, Admiral," she said sincerely. "I won't let you down, or them." "See that you don't," Thornridge replied, but there was no bite in his words. "I've put my reputation on the line based on your assessment. If this goes wrong—" "It won't," Aaron promised. "We've made it this far by choosing understanding over fear. We just need to continue on that path." The diplomatic delegation arrived 2 weeks later, a collection of high-ranking Aegis officials, xenobiologists, and diplomatic specialists who viewed the Radiance with varying degrees of skepticism and wonder. Aaron found herself in the exhausting position of mediating not only between species, but between competing human agendas. Some of the delegation saw the Radiance as a scientific curiosity to be studied, others as a potential resource to be exploited, and still others as a security threat to be contained. Few seemed to grasp what Aaron had come to understand through her neural link sessions, that the Radiants were ancient stewards of Talos IV, their consciousness deeply interwoven with the planet's energy patterns in ways that human science was only beginning to comprehend. The turning point came during a demonstration of the neural interface. One of the delegation members, a seasoned diplomat named Haruka Nakamura, volunteered to experience the radiant perception firsthand. She emerged from the brief session profoundly shaken, her previous diplomatic reserve cracked by the experience. "I've negotiated with 17 non-human species across 5 sectors," she told the assembled delegation afterward, her voice uncharacteristically emotional. "But I've never encountered anything like this. They don't just inhabit this world, they're part of it, connected to it in ways we can barely comprehend." She turned to face the Aegis High Commander directly. "This isn't a question of resource rights or territorial claims, sir. This is a first contact scenario with a truly alien intelligence, one that was here long before us and has developed a symbiotic relationship with an environment we considered worthless, except for its mineral deposits." The High Commander, a stern-faced woman named Admiral Helena Volkov, considered Nakamura's words with a thoughtful frown. "You believe we should withdraw all mining claims to Talos IV? I believe we should recognize that our understanding of value is limited by our human perspective," Nakamura replied carefully. "The Radiants have developed technology we can't even recognize as such, because it operates on principles foreign to our experience. There is more to learn here than there is to extract." The debate continued for days, but the tide had begun to turn. More members of the delegation experienced the neural interface, each coming away with a new perspective on the Radiants and their relationship to Talos IV. Finally, Admiral Volkov summoned Aaron to a private meeting. The High Commander's quarters were austere, reflecting her military background, but Aaron noticed a small display of alien art objects, gifts from various diplomatic missions. Perhaps, "Dr. Voss," Volkov began without preamble. Your discovery has placed Aegis in a complicated position. Our charter authorizes us to secure resources for human expansion, to study new life forms, and to protect human interests in space. It says nothing about negotiating with non-humanoid consciousnesses that experience reality in ways we can barely comprehend. Aaron waited, sensing that Volkov had more to say. And yet, the Admiral continued, the essence of our mission has always been to expand human understanding of the universe. Sometimes that means recognizing when our frameworks are insufficient. She activated a holographic display, showing a map of the sector with Talos 4 highlighted. I am prepared to recommend that the Aegis Council designate Talos 4 as a protected xenocultural preserve, with all mining operations permanently suspended. In exchange, we would establish a long-term research and diplomatic outpost to continue developing communication with the Radiants. Aaron felt a wave of relief wash over her. That's more than I hoped for, Admiral. Thank you. Volkov raised a hand. Don't thank me yet, Doctor. This recommendation comes with conditions. You will remain as the primary liaison to the Radiants, with a mandate to develop deeper understanding of their technology, particularly their ability to thrive in high-radiation environments and their neurological field generation. Such capabilities could have significant applications for human endeavors in hostile environments. Knowledge exchange rather than resource extraction. Aaron nodded. The Radiants might be receptive to that approach, especially if we can help repair some of the damage caused by previous mining operations. Then we have an agreement in principle, Volkov said, extending her hand. Contingent, of course, on your ability to communicate this arrangement to your ambassador. The formal ceremony establishing the Talos 4 Xenocultural Preserve took place at the edge of the Radiant Valley, a surreal meeting of human diplomatic protocol and alien consciousness. Ambassador and several other large Radiants attended, their massive forms arranged in a semicircle opposite the Aegis delegation. Aaron, wearing the neural interface headset, stood at the center of the gathering, simultaneously present in the human ceremony and connected to the radiant perception of the event. Through the neural link, she conveyed the human intentions, protection of the radiant territory, cessation of mining activities, and a request for knowledge exchange. The response from the Radiants came not in words or gestures that the human delegation could interpret, but in a harmonious modulation of their neurological fields that Aaron experienced as a profound sense of cautious acceptance. Through the translator, she attempted to convey this response to the waiting humans. They accept our proposal, she announced, though their concept of territory and ownership differs significantly from ours. They perceive our presence as a new pattern in the energy flows of their world, a pattern that has been destructive in the past, but now shows potential for harmony is the closest translation I can offer. Admiral Volkov nodded, seemingly satisfied. Then, on behalf of the Aegis Council, I hereby establish the Talos 4 Xenocultural Preserve, effective immediately. All mining operations are suspended, and this outpost is redesignated as a diplomatic and research installation. The formal words seemed almost comically inadequate in the face of the profound connection Aaron was experiencing through the neural link. The Radiant's perception of the ceremony was a complex interplay of energy patterns, emotional resonances, and something deeper that the translator could only render as future growth potential. As the human delegation applauded the announcement, Ambassador suddenly moved forward, his massive form approaching Aaron with deliberate grace. The security personnel tensed, but Aaron remained calm, trusting in the connection they had established. With a movement that had become familiar over the months of interaction, Ambassador lowered his enormous body and exposed his iridescent belly. The gesture, now understood as one of trust and friendly connection. A ripple of surprised laughter spread through the human delegation at the incongruous sight. "I believe," Aaron said, unable to suppress her smile. That ambassador is requesting a ceremonial belly rub to seal our agreement. Admiral Volkov raised an eyebrow. Then, to the astonishment of her staff, stepped forward and removed her formal glove. In the interest of interspecies diplomacy, she said dryly, extending her hand toward the massive creature's exposed underside. The contact was brief, but symbolic. The highest representative of human authority in the sector, acknowledging the radiant custom, with respect, rather than fear or disdain. Through the neural link, Aaron felt Ambassador's response, a complex emotion that the translator rendered imperfectly, as honored acceptance amusement. As the ceremony concluded and the delegation dispersed, Aaron remained at the valley's edge, watching as the radiants returned to their mysterious activities among the crystalline formations. Singh joined her, carrying 2 mugs of the synthetic coffee that had become a precious commodity at the remote outpost. "Well," Singh said, handing Aaron one of the mugs, "when I joined this expedition, I certainly didn't expect to end up as part of a diplomatic corps for belly-rub-loving radiation monsters." Aaron laughed, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Life finds a way to surprise us, especially when we open ourselves to experiences beyond our expectations." They stood in companionable silence, watching as the crimson sun of Talos IV began its descent toward the horizon, casting the alien landscape in shades of burgundy and gold. In the valley below, the radiant's bioluminescence became more pronounced in the gathering dusk, their massive forms moving with surprising grace among the crystalline formations. "What do you think they're doing down there?" Singh asked softly. "All those patterns they create with the crystals. Are they art, technology, religion?" "Yes," Aaron replied with a smile. "And no, our categories don't quite apply. Through the neural link, I get impressions of cultivation, harmonization, something like music but not just sound, more like they're playing the energy fields of the planet itself, creating patterns that sustain their community." She took a sip of her coffee, her gaze still fixed on the alien activity below. "We've barely scratched the surface of understanding them. Raya, this is the work of generations, not months. And you'll be leading it," Singh observed. "The first human liaison to the radiant civilization. That's quite a legacy." "Aaron." "I never sought a legacy," Aaron replied, her voice thoughtful. "I just wanted to understand, to connect rather than fear, to see the universe through different eyes." A soft, harmonic tone drew their attention back to the valley, where Ambassador had positioned himself at the edge nearest their observation point. Through the residual connection of the neural link, Aaron felt a gentle invitation, not urgent, but warm with something like affection. "I believe you're being summoned," Singh said with an amused smile. "Diplomatic duties call." Aaron handed her empty mug to Singh and picked up the neural interface headset from the nearby equipment table. "The burdens of office," she said with mock solemnity. "Ambassador has been trying to show me something in their crystal formations for days now. I think I'm finally starting to perceive the patterns correctly." As she made her way down the path toward the valley floor, Aaron reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the initial fear and near-violent confrontation to this moment of peaceful exchange between radically different forms of consciousness. The universe was vast and filled with wonders beyond human imagination. Yet sometimes, the most profound connections came from the simplest gestures. Ambassador awaited her at the boundary of the radiant territory, his massive form silhouetted against the twilight sky. As Aaron approached, he lowered himself in what she now recognized as a greeting between equals rather than a submission. She activated the neural interface and was immediately enveloped in the rich, complex perception of the radiant consciousness, a world alive with energy patterns, harmonic resonances, and the deep, abiding connection between the radiance and their environment. "Show me," she said, though no words were needed across their neural connection. "I'm ready to learn." And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky of Talos 4, human and alien minds touched across the vast gulf of evolution and experience, each enriched by the encounter, each forever changed by the simple truth that compassion could transcend even the most profound differences. In the soft light of the alien dusk, Ambassador rolled to expose his iridescent belly once more. The gesture now a familiar ritual between them, not just a request for physical contact, but a symbol of the trust that had been built between two species who had once regarded each other with fear. Erin smiled and extended her hand, ready to continue the unlikely friendship that had begun with a simple belly rub and blossomed into humanity's most profound first contact. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. And perhaps that was the most universal language of all.